unrecord. I'll just show this to Matthew later. Let me share my screen.
Matthew, come on.
Share
Oh yeah.
So yeah, on these two up here, there's a link. Although to get to this visualization, you can't link directly to it.
Oh, okay, right. That's what's going on.
So actually, so they have hover. And then it kind of shows you the path you're on with a slightly greater thing. So it's
Wait, so that's that. This is you.
It is one of the challenges of this is managing the information density because it's huge.
Okay, so this is the hover, and then we yeah. Yeah. My personal opinions on that is like nicely done, but like swing and a miss, in my opinion, on Kiala.
Right.
And one of the main reasons is I think a lot of UI folks.
Hey, Matthew.
Matthew.
Good morning. Sorry for being late.
So Matthew, this is Max. Max is the founder of Refractive Strategy.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Think
meet you,
visually, work. I forgot our slogan.
Oh, it's okay.
Think visually, work brilliantly.
Just work better. Yeah.
Work better.
Think visually, work brilliantly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to do a play on light, sparkling, and refracting. But yeah, Bentley has been. We've been working together for almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
And working on different projects. I don't know how much he's told you, but a lot of it has to sort of do with complex information and visual interface, and a lot of it has been built around helping teams with tooling on plugins in Miro. So tools that help people do better, whiteboard visualization, collaboration, stuff like that. And some of it has engaged with like the D3JS library and other sort of data viz algorithms and stuff. I come to that from a history of a lot of different things. A lot of it centered around visual communication. So I did video professionally, like in the 2000s. I worked in AR and VR startup and stuff, kind of haunting the MIT Media Lab for a hot minute in 2016 through 2019, and was like, what are we gonna do with this next dimension? And I was like, oh, it's not a lot until we have AR headsets on everyone's heads and stuff like that. Learned to code over like 2015 through 2020. I am nowhere near Bentley Davis status, but I can make a mess that that impresses at least myself, if not a client or two on occasion. And Bentley helps me make it a lot smarter and scalable and whatnot. How about yourself, man? It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So I'm definitely newer to the tech side of things. About 9 months before COVID arrived, I had done a web dev boot camp through the University of Washington to try to make a switch. Before that, I had also done a number of things, like some wireless or tech support. The bulk of what I'd done was 5 years working for a local nonprofit, DESC. They provide short-term housing and long-term sorry, short-term shelter and long-term housing for the homeless in the Seattle
Right.
area. So lots of
Awesome.
social services.
Yeah, right on. I did a lot of stuff I didn't really mention. It was did a lot of stuff in kind of the nonprofit space, and founded an organization out in DC that was around workforce development, green jobs for people coming out of homeless shelters, getting them into weatherization and energy efficiency jobs and stuff like that, and working with farmers cooperatives and various other like social mission stuff. And like I've always
Nice.
really wanted to empower those missions with better technology or better systems. And yeah,
Yeah, our
yeah.
mission was a lot more focused on just getting people stable rather than trying to
Mhm.
get them into work,
Yeah.
getting them a place to be comfortable that they're not going to be at risk every day and every night, so that they can have that foundation to start from.
Totally. It's such a complex issue.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of stuff did you do when you were doing that? Were you clerical? Were you running spreadsheets around, or were you like more interfacing with
So I was
humans, or-
in a float position. There was, unsurprisingly, a lot of turnover in
Mhm.
that field. So I would fill in for any of the different projects that had open shifts,
Mhm.
which meant that I worked all over the city. The majority of what I did was working the front desk, the main person that would work with our clients, help them with their issues with the rooms, either schedule with their case managers or help them get scheduled with other service providers, meals, security, and working with EMTs or law enforcement.
Mhm.
Pretty much anything that needed doing around the building, I had a hand in.
Nice. And how's coding been for you? Have you been enjoying it, or?
It's been all right. Like I enjoy doing the coding. It's been a tough field to break into professionally. So
Oh, really?
It's hard to get
Like,
junior level jobs. I just
is that
I've
right?
been mentoring someone like 6 months, and she went through a boot camp and has been doing CS50, and she just got her job, first entry level
Mm.
job. But
Congrats to her, though.
it took a lot longer than I would have thought to do that.
Yeah,
Cool. So like interviews and stuff, or even just getting callbacks and things like that has been a challenge.
getting the callbacks has been the biggest challenge. Typically, I think people look at my resume, don't see any paid history, and just toss it off because they have other applicants that are
Mhm.
due or have 4-year degrees or internships.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we're
And
hoping to give Matthew an opportunity to do some coding in Dolibot,
Mhm.
that he can use the share, and I'll be paying him for it. So it'll be an official.
Right on. It's the best way. Like little achievable projects that can start to add up into the resume for sure.
yeah, like I've done a little bit of volunteer work for it. It's like there's a European nonprofit, Distribute Aid, that provides logistics for other aid organizations to consolidate their shipping so it can be cheaper and easier to get the right stuff to the right place. So I've done some work on their website. I did a little bit of UX design for a gaming nonprofit for a type of game that I help run, but it's bits and pieces rather than any solid major project.
Yeah, totally. It's nice to have like a contained chunk where it's like kind of start to finish, which is hard sometimes in code. Sort of like,
Mhm.
oh, I helped out on this widget, or I rewrote this, and it's hard to draw a picture of it and tell a story around it, but
Mhm.
that's cool. There's definitely some stuff afoot here with Golibot.
Yeah, I should have actually had my screen share down when we were getting to know each other better, but I didn't think of that till just now.
No, right on. Well, this is
You wanna
fun. Well, it's
dive
great
in?
to meet you, man, and we will share some brain space here for a bit. What's our goal, Bentley?
Yeah, so kind of some of the default UI design goals, and I'm saying default because there's going to be several UIs, I imagine, on top of like the data. So several different visualizations. But what we're trying to suss out now is kind of the best design to start with before we have time to build all the other designs, and also the one that would be easiest for people that don't know what Goalibot is to get familiar with it. So, point number 2 in here is assume unfamiliar. So we assume that this is the first time they're seeing the screen. And then mobile, because I think the major use case of this is that you're sitting in a bar at a party and someone says something, and you're like, well, I'm not so sure about that. And then you can just, get their email address or send them a link, or, tell them a link to this, and then they can go in there and you can have a discussion there or later, and have with Goalibot's data kind of helping it be a more kind of civil and fact-based discussion. And then I added in here that kind of logical scoring and fact organization, because when I was first talking to Matthew, I was emphasizing the giving people a feeling of being heard and understood.
Mhm.
But like one of the concepts is it'd be nice if when people go to it, they feel like, oh, I see my claim. This is my claim that I would have made. This is my concern, and it's written better than I would have written it. But that's secondary to having the information in a logical form so that the scoring works, and so that people's brains don't always work in a logical way. So the priority would be having a logical order, and then we'll figure out other ways in the visualization to present the data to them in such a way. So it may be like, here's the way it's written to be exacting, but we can, if they do a search, they could find the wording the way they would have phrased it, and then kind of explain to them why we rephrased it this way. Anyway, so those are the kind of the main design goals. Hopefully it'll be intuitive, and you can even feel the weight of the claims instead of the scores being maybe numbers, if there's a visualization. Although if we can't do that at the beginning, that's fine. It'd be nice to have it when you have a more screen real estate, it would be even more understandable. And then
Mhm.
later on, multiple visualizations. Any questions on those? And I'm going to dig deeper, but
I don't think so yet. I'm trying to think of like what Goalibot context I might be missing here. But it looks like you might be heading into it here.
yeah, although I guess I don't really answer that. So yeah, so more on like the user story for this is, yeah, someone says concealed carry reduces crime. Oh yeah, we all know the good guy with a gun prevents a lot of crime. And the person who hears that disagrees with that, the concept would be, oh, well, okay, so here's this character goalie that, here's a link to some info. But the great thing about this link is that you go in there, instead of you and me having an argument over whether that's true or not, you go and tell goalie where goalie's wrong. And then I kind of agree with goalie, because goalie is a fast fact-based system. So you go in there and you find out where goalie's wrong. There will be a way to change goalie's mind. And when you change goalie's mind, then we'll talk through that rather than having a debate. So that's kind of the context. Is that better?
Do I cite studies with like white papers attached?
So yeah, when you're inside Goaliebot, there will be a way to say, oh, you're missing this study, or even more so, that study shouldn't be, it doesn't apply because they did something wrong that wasn't replicated, or different things. So yeah, you can go in and put in reasons, facts, claims.
Okay.
But we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But that's kind of the use case. If you imagine you're having dinner with your crazy uncle and you don't want to have the debate at dinner, but you do want to have a more ordered discussion over it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about what are the questions that people have when they come to the site. So like, let's say you're at dinner and someone sends you a link, texts you a link to a Golibot page or something. So your first question is going to be like, what is this whole thing for, right? And this is more maybe like site design than the actual visualization of the data, but we need to make sure that that's there. So the less intuitive the data visualization is, the more explanation we need. So hopefully there won't be a lot, but we may need it at the beginning, especially since I really don't, this is all experimental. We don't really know what we're doing. I think we're going to change our direction pretty quickly. So just kind of an explanation of that. And yeah, Golibot documents contentious issues to increase agreement and reduce misinformation and polarization. It's kind of one way of phrasing it. So whether that needs to be at the top of every page, every debate, but something that can close once they understand it is, one potential solution to that. And then we want them to kind of understand that Golibot is gullible and may not be right yet. But there's a lot of information to go through. So we want them to feel like they can correct Goli and Goli will listen. Right now, that's all done through Twitter rather than through the website itself. And that has its pros and cons because when you tweet something to Golibot, at least it's public. So if Golibot's ignoring a lot of people, it'll be obvious. And then they're going to know, like, how do I read the score? What is this, either 78% or what does this dot mean? Or what is this sentence? So how's it? And then the next question immediately after that, well, how did you get to that score? And one of the misconceptions is they think it's voting, but there's no voting involved.
Is Kialo voting?
Yeah, these scores are, you're not voting on the actual like truthfulness. You're just saying how much does this impact it. I don't know if they have something for truthfulness or confidence in it. I think it may just be impact.
Well, it's a negative or positive impact on the parent node.
Yeah, if it's in the pro column and con column. And then one other thing that people have had trouble with the current design is that they don't even know that there are child claims under this main claim and how to open and close it. Matthew's already started taking a look at that, but that's one of the kind of design criteria. And then there's like the score discovery order. What is this? What questions does the viewer want to know or understand to understand what Golibot believes and why Golibot believes it? Goli believes it. So like when the person's reading a claim, is Golibot saying it's true or false? And then interesting. So some of the studies show that if you put a claim up there and then you put a label that says false on it, a lot of times people will remember a week later, they'll remember that it was true rather than it was false because they just remember the main claim. So a lot of the fact-checking sites are starting to reverse the phrasing if it's false so that people tend to remember the correct way better. So some of this may not just only be in the visualization, but also be in the text. So that depending on what Golibot believes, it may need to be written out. And for the vaccine, the main one on Golibot, I have it written. I am confident that you should take the COVID vaccine rather than just the question, should you take it, which is the title at the top. But so most likely we're going to need some sort of text that describes Golibot's analysis rather than either a number or, a Where's my bucket? The show bucket. Yeah, the bucket. That kind of is a visualization. So we'll probably need text with a visualization, or at least to modify the text as the scores change. They'll want to know how confident is Golibot in the conclusion. How did Kelly come to that conclusion, which had to do with the children. And then if you're reading a claim, you want to, the things that I think people want to know is how much does this affect the main score? Like, is this irrelevant, or does this have a huge effect or small effect? And then also they kind of want to know, well, what's its effect on its parent? Because it could have a different effect on its parent compared to the main claim that they're doing. And then at the very last, which I don't know if people ever think this far, but what would happen if the claim had a different score? So like if they go, if I prove to Golibot that this claim is false, how will that change the main score?
Okay.
Anyways.
Okay.
So those are kind of
I'm
the
building
things.
up questions, building up
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to dive into those with the way the math works. There are some weird challenges that we're going to run into when, because your first intuition is going to say, oh, let's have a different size dot for the color that says blah, blah, blah. And there's some challenges with that. So let me just put a caveat that when we start going through some of the visualization ideas, there'll be some things we'll have to work around that aren't obvious until you really get into the data. So these are some of the visualizations. Now is probably a good time to dive into the questions. And at some point I have like, here is how the score works. Here's the scale of the score. And then I have a little process where we can play around and see if y'all can figure out intuitively how the scores work. Because it works the way you would expect a 6-year-old child to understand the world, where they just believe everything they're told. It works in their brain the same way. It works in Golibot the same way. So yeah, so I guess this would be a good point to stop and say, does anyone have any questions or ideas?
Yeah, I mean, there's one of the ways I'm thinking right now is like one of my first feelings is Max, the engineer brain, wants to pick it apart and understand the algorithm down to the nuts and bolts, but Max, the UX designer, wants to ask more, putting myself in the shoes of a user, as a way to probe first. Like what is so I'm asking some questions here, and I'm sort of working some notes underneath on the left, but what does a person need to know to trust this app? And I think you're basically pointing at that, which is sort of in the site discovery. You know, how is the score derived, but also like, you know, first I need to like see that this thing, I need to understand that this provides value, but I also need to trust that it provides the value before I invest my time in literally typing a single word or creating an account or anything like that. So I need to like trust that it's doing something. So then it's like, well, what do I need to know to, like, two things have to happen. I have to make the cost benefit like is a ratio at like every step of the UX, at least in the beginning, but almost always, like,
right.
So I can increase the value quotient, like just making it like look really attracting, and or like tease somebody into it, like, hey, that, you know, challenging somebody to be like, oh, I want to correct that, or I really want to engage with the thing. So there's lots of techniques I could use to like make it more alluring, but up to a certain point. And then there's the cost, which is like, well, I can see that that's pretty valuable to engage with it, but I don't trust that the amount of time it's going to take to get to that value is going to be worth it for me. And so I might want to say, oh, your first steps are really easy. I might want to make like a really like low hanging fruit first step that's like, you can already, comment on a thing and Goalibot engages with you and it kind of draws you in. I think the other thing you can kind of think of in these spaces that are in my head are like game loops, like in game design, where there's like little wins, like all of a sudden you like beat the first level, obviously, but you're like, that was fun. And now I'm better at something. And so there's that kind of way to pull people in as well. And then like on their third game loop, you have them create an account or something like that. And so those are the kind of things I'm thinking first, but I'm like, what is that? And I don't know that you're trying to tackle necessarily the like initialization user story, or if you're trying to tackle like later on user stories of like advanced usership and whatnot. So that's something I'm also curious about.
Yeah, we're definitely like earlier in the process. So like really what this experiment is testing to see whether this scoring system works. Like, can you even score confidence in claims? Like, is that even a thing you can do? And then secondary, is there a way to express it to people, in which case they will at least understand what the scores express? And then after that is getting people is testing whether people give feedback and want to improve it. So that's a good question. Yeah. So right now there's no AI. And when I say Goalibot, it's not even a bot. All it is a scoring algorithm. So everything is manual. And that's kind of confusing part of calling it a bot, but
totally.
The main thing, and
do you expect eventually to put more into
yeah. Right now it's just all kind of manual until we prove, because if the algorithm doesn't work, the whole reason for having the bot doesn't work. But it'll never be fully without. Well, I don't know. That's the thing, is I don't know how much curation in the future it's going to need. So like Kialo, if you just let people put in pros and cons and you don't have any professionals in there cleaning it up and organizing the data, people, it's a skill to be able to do that. So I'm thinking now that there will never be a system where you don't have to have paid curators and people that are rephrasing things. And AI will help with that in the future, but I don't think AI will ever be you won't have a real-time conversation with Goalibot. It's always going to be, I'm feeding this information into Goalibot, it's going to process. Now, the main thing of making it a character is so that people understood that the scores are what the child's brain, a simple computer understands. So the picture we want to give in their mind is just like someone like a 6 to 10-year-old, actually probably closer to a 10-year-old, right? Who doesn't know anything about the world or the topic you're talking about. You're just giving this child pros and cons. What score would it have in its mind if the child could write it all out? And we could change it to a character that's not a bot, so that it would still begin with Goalie, but because the main thing is it's gullible.
This is Gullah baby.
Yeah.
That's like, anyway, but so, anyways. All right. So it seems to me that, I mean, from my vantage point, like I'm just below where you're, those other things. It's like, keep going, scroll down a tiny bit. I'll bring them up. The like, I trust the algorithm, let's play is like a very common like process for humans, which is like, what are the rules? Like, do I, consent to those rules? Do I think that those rules will create like a good outcome? And I think one of them that's really, interesting is that we do in sports and in democracy, we concede a certain amount that says this won't necessarily maximize my outcome, but it optimizes for some common value
Mhm.
of creating a higher truth or creating a better representation of our
Yeah.
populace. Or for example, like winner keeps or winner takes in one-on-one basketball is one where person who scores the basket gets the ball to go again. It's designed to quickly, it's pro-cyclical. It's designed to quickly make one-on-one games like win for the winner so that the next person can play, because it's designed to accelerate
Mhm.
one-on-one so more people can actually get on the court. But you buy into that when you play. You're like, okay, if somebody's better than me, they keep getting the ball and they keep scoring more goals. Anyway, like little things like that where it's like you buy into the algorithm but based on the context. So anyway, to me, when I look at this, I'm like, it's very opaque at first glance, like what your algorithm is. And so it does seem to me that like communicating that algorithm, either written or visual, and maybe a combination of both or a video or something, is critical to getting that initial engagement.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that though is that, so getting a video is there, but also how the algorithm works, I'm hoping will be understandable by reading the content. Like if they want to know how did I get the 76% score, rather than explaining to them how the score happens in general, it's almost the only way to understand the scoring is to have an example, and they have an example right in front of them. So if we can make it to where the UI makes it clear how the scores are derived in the example they're already looking at, that I think would be more powerful than a generic video, which I do have a very, let me like one of the possible visualizations, these are all numbers though. This is 76%. This claim gives you a plus 27. This claim gives you a plus 0. This is a -3, a plus 27, plus 27, -3, and a 0. So it tells you how each claim goes up the stack.
Okay.
And then if you want to see why this claim is a 0, you can open it up. And unfortunately, the problem is once it goes, this is one of the challenges. Once it goes to 0, all the children are 0. But just looking at this, yeah, that's a bad example. And that could be another problem too, is that a real world example may be too complex. Like this one's 27%. It is fully considered. Golibot's 100% confident in this, but it makes up 27% of the total score. So that's what's confusing.
So there's a difference
about
between a weight or a score, a weight, a score, and a confidence level.
Yeah. So like this is, we're 99% confident in this one, but it makes up 27% of the 76.
Right. So that's a two-dimensional. That's
which is probably way too
two-dimensional,
complicated for most people.
Right. To show some sort of thing. Additionally, like instead of like one thing I see immediately, like is that you basically have these claim cards or comment kind of claim cards. They are rectangular, generally biasing, like aspect ratio is much larger horizontally than vertically. And it would seem to me that if you want to like utilize instead of the bucket, for example, you're giving the bucket like one line height.
It's 2, but yeah.
You're giving the bucket one line height, 2 line height.
Yeah. Well, it's 1.5.
Where it does
right
kind of
now.
look, it is kind of helpful, but ultimately, like we would get much deeper discernment if you went with a bar across the top. I don't think that like doing background color would help, but you could potentially do like the bar that fills would take on a deeper saturation the higher it gets. So you would double up on that channel. So
Yeah.
you'd have, okay, so you've got, what
So
is this? You've got
one's-
this thing?
Right. No, that's a good point where it fills up. This one has a pointer, but
Yeah.
after I did this one based on someone's design, I realized that, yeah, filling it up would be much better and almost with an arrow, because these there will be dragging the conversation. So the truer in this case is more to the right, false is to the left, or high confidence, low confidence. So having an arrow saying this claim drags it over this much, and this claim would have an arrow from like the center to the left saying this claim is pulling it this way.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, you're sort of like stacking nuts on a old school scale, and it's like,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you could benefit from, and it seems to me that Kealo's sort of also operating in that, put the cons on the right, the pros on the left, which inverts at each layer though, which is interesting, right? So if I'm going to argue against somebody's con, then I like.
Well, there's
Do
two
I
reasons
invert it?
why I don't like the cons left, or the cons or the pros next to each other, is
Right.
because I think visually it kind of implies this pro has something to do with this con, which they don't.
Right.
They're unrelated. And then also on mobile, it's kind of, you're cutting your screen in half, which they have. Oh, and then the third reason is
Yeah, look what they've done here. Like,
it's a hierarchy.
like look what they've done here, which is kind of just like annoying, and it's just, granted, like we have limited screen space and we have limited like UI capabilities, but like up above, we are selected on a particular node where it is, it's a con node to a con node to an original claim, and it's got 2 con node children and 2 pro children that are side by side, so they're on equal vertical plane. So that bottom row, and the same with the row above it, but that bottom row, it's like it's 2 greens next to each other as siblings, yeah, of the same. I mean, you could say the one on the left is more important than the ones on the right, maybe,
Yeah.
but we don't necessarily read that way. But then when you come down to the like zoomed in views, so to speak, they're now stacked, and now you have things that are immediately left and right of one another, which do sort of imply a correlation between the two. And it doesn't map. So what you see in small doesn't map to what you see in big. And that's like really taxing like our mental capacities to like make that association. That's not obvious. Like when I first scanned this, it was not obvious, but I have to think about it. And because I have to think about it, it's like wasting my brain matter. Like the #1 like UI UX book that's out there is called Don't Make Me Think.
Yeah.
It's like the canonical like UI UX book. It's called Don't Make Me Think. I don't know if have you read that, Matt, or have you dipped into that?
No.
Go pick up a copy. I think you'll love it. But like it's that kind of a thing where it like nitpicks at user interface, because it's like for example, like in a car, in a car, like Tesla, like the touch screens make you click, music, audio, volume down. An old school car, or whatever other car, reach for the singular knob and rotate it. It's like much less like thinking involved in like just accomplishing the task of getting the volume to go down. But yeah, so like we don't, so like I find that it is tough to show an expansive network in an iPhone. I do believe that some amount of pinch and zoom is productive, but you have to be very careful now, because fingers are big.
Yeah.
And the detail that you're about to interact with is plentiful. So like if each one of the, if you were to look at that network graph at the top of the Kialo one, and if you were to like pinch and zoom to try to get in there
Mm-hmm.
and zoom in on one of those things, each one of those nodes that's in there would have a click event on multiple sub items that would be available that you could totally trash your experience really quickly.
Yeah, right.
And so then there's almost this like level of detail, like only certain things are available at certain zooms. And then you start creating this kind of this whole zoom in interaction engine that like, dude, if somebody like Miro has put millions of dollars into their slippable, slidable zoom in, interface. And somebody tried to, on a Zoom meeting the other day, like wasn't in front of his computer, but wanted to show me some of his work on Miro, was doing it on a phone.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept like destroying his work because he kept like, instead of zooming, he kept like grabbing moving a thing. And so it can get like so the one thing to consider with mobile always is just like thumbs are fat. They're not like a cursor, and like fingers are less accurate than mouse pointers that can like, you can rest your hand and get like really clear. But UIs that require high precision are also really taxing to us. Like if you spend your time working on like Photoshop or, Adobe Premiere, and you're like down into this little thing with that little sub thing, and you're like moving your cursor like 3 pixels, it's like, it can get really tiring.
And
So
it's
then
the
you
sort
start
of thing
looking
where
for
even
hotkeys.
experts in using it will start dropping important details, like which layer they're on if they're an artist.
Exactly. And then usually what'll end up happening is there's so much finicky stuff in there that you just get really good at hotkeys, and the UI UX people like have these shortcuts, which there's a few in the mobile space, but I see illuminating what Bentley's done here. You've got nesting layers getting increasingly kind of horizontally smaller, moving over to the right.
Well, they don't actually, they don't get smaller. So in this case, which is
They just
a bad UX thing, but because now phones, if you do that, sometimes it'll go to the next page or the previous page.
Yep.
I hate when it
but
does that.
that's
Totally.
bad. So right now, as you go deeper nesting, you can scroll over, and that gives you the full width to read the text of the claim. So that
Well,
was
the
one of
question
the
I have,
design ideas.
one question I have back on the algorithm thing, Bentley, is like, where do the numbers come from? If it's not voting, it's 100% believability until a claim counter to it has subclaims.
Yeah, until it has any child claims that change that score. So Gullybot is gullible. So Gully believes every claim with 100% confidence until given a reason to doubt it. Gully doesn't read the text at all. All the claims are the same weight. So like you said, we could have confidence in a weight, and then we could have relevance. So maybe that's true, but it doesn't apply. But Gullybot will assume that it applies, and it's the same weight as everything else until Gully is told otherwise. And the third thing that gets a little bit complicated is Gullybot becomes less confident in a claim. Oh, as Gullybot becomes less confident, I had to think about it. Less confident in a claim, that claim has less weight. So if something's all the way down to undetermined, it'll also have 0 weight in the debate, because if we don't know whether that claim's true or not, it shouldn't apply.
Okay, so I've heard score, confidence, relevance, and weight.
Yeah.
Help me sort these out. So score.
The final score pretty much is a word. So it'll actually change depending on the context of what you're scoring, but a general word that applies to most everything is confidence. So the score, the number result is how confident is goalie in the top claim. It's always how confident is goalie in that claim. So if we say, if goalie says 76% for you should take the vaccine, then goalie is 70% confident. So confidence is score on the top one.
So,
You're trying to move things and listen at the same time.
well, so score is confidence. Is weight a score? Is relevance scored?
Well, they are not the score, but they are numbers that go to build up the score.
Okay, so the score, and there's a score at every claim, at every
claim
node?
has a confidence score, but
Okay.
then how it affects its parent, it'll have a different, depending on its confidence, it'll have a different weight. And it'll have a different relevance. Now, weight and relevance are analogous.
Okay.
Weight, relevance, and importance are three terms that are very similar. And
We
so
have to get control of these words here. That I'm
well,
certain.
yeah, the problem is more the English language, but yeah.
Well,
So
we have to, we'll ultimately have to, once we understand what the system is here,
yeah,
we have to,
express it.
yeah, we need to express it as simply as possible without betraying the underlying logic.
Yeah, so like going through the terminology and not using weight or relevance and just consistently using importance might be the way to do it.
Like the word
I'm
claim.
kind of loose when I'm discussing things because like you can make a claim, you could say this claim is more important than this other claim, which will give it more weight. Right.
You can say that as a contributor
in the
using this app,
system,
as
in
a
the
user,
system, you can express that.
as a user.
Yeah. Well, the users can't interact with the system directly. They would interact through Twitter, but they would say this claim's more important than one of our curators would go in and they would put their reason as a claim that affects importance, and then it would increase the importance of that claim. It might be helpful if we went through some examples. So like in the short term, until we experiment and show, or no, until we decide we need to, there won't be any way for people, the average user, to interact. It's really more like it's a newspaper, it's a PolitiFact where you go and you read the facts or a Snopes, except we invite people to give feedback in more than they do. And then we try and keep up to date on their feedback, but people aren't going to have a user interface to add the data directly yet. I don't want to build all that till I kind of prove out some of the other parts, which I think we can do without building it out, but I could be wrong.
Okay, so there's a curator
There is
with their fingers on the scale.
Well, that's what people will think. That's their initial thought. But really what it is, it's taking someone to, it's taking the information that people post on social media and putting it into GoalieBot. That's what GoalieBot thinks. So GoalieBot is a curated experience. But the goal is to make sure that you take in everyone's feedback and you express it better than they could have.
I do agree with the
Well,
It's
there's
one of
no,
our sticking points.
the problem is that
sounds
that's
wicked
not
sketchy.
That's right, but that's not an option. We have to work within the bounds of reality. The system, I mean, if we want that, we would build Kiala, right? And this is just an experiment. So first the question is, can we take the information out on social media and allow people to feed back in the GoalieBot and then craft an experience? It's an explainer, right? But it's an explainer with a feedback loop. You know, y'all are looking, that's a great idea, but we're not going to get there in the first step, and it may be impossible to get there because people do not express themselves well. People, it's a trained thing. People just aren't good at it. So letting people kind of run wild and input data into the system is not, I'm not even designing that piece right now. Right now, Goalibot is something you communicate over through Twitter, and whether or not people trust Goalibot or not will depend on how quickly we can get their expressions put into the system.
So you're saying a group of gully overlords dictate what gets posted.
That's one way.
I'm exercising the demons here. Just from a standpoint of like why I wouldn't trust this is my voice is moderated, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
so
It's not your voice, it's Goalibot's voice. It's like going to an expert. Although in this case, it's the gullible expert.
Yeah, the goal would be that it feels to them like, oh, this is how Goalibot understood me, but that's not an easy goal to reach.
I mean, so that's a
mhm.
disadvantage of the system, but that's one of the pieces that we're testing. It's more like a Snopes or a PolitiFact, but with a tighter feedback cycle and a more transparent decision-making process.
But we know Snopes has a liberal bias.
Yeah.
Right, like that's the kind of critique you get
Right,
when you're a
right.
Snopes
But
or
you
you're
know
a
what, right,
PolitiFact, right?
Right, but I can't fix everything all in one jump. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one step better than Snopes and one step better than PolitiFact and one step better than all these other ones. What we're going to do is we're going to take feedback, period, which they don't. We're going to integrate it quickly, and we're going to express both sides of the issue fully. And we're going to have transparency. So we're just one step better than Snopes, but we're not going to be perfect.
Okay, so we have an issue in front of us, which is still trust. Regardless of whether like this can or can't be done, we still have to make sure that we accomplish the mission of building trust in the beginning. So what I'm raising is that there will inherently be skepticism to a system that requires humans to touch it.
Yep.
And so maybe there's, for example, I'm just throwing out one, instead of the word curator, it's called a translator, which is more like,
yeah, curation
it's a bit
sounds
more
like
of like I'm getting my thing
you're
across.
limiting.
Curation, yeah, curation's like if my thing isn't good enough, it gets pruned away, or like we are filtering this for insert whichever agenda I'm most concerned about. So that needs to be explained, and that's not even.
And
that came out well after. So those numbers are inputted by the person,
no,
by the curator. Like the curator puts
no.
like an
As you enter the
level.
claims, the scores are auto-generated based on the position of the claims and the number of claims. But there is a lot in deciding where you put a claim. It affects the score. But then people can tell us through Twitter that score is in the wrong place, and that's transparent, right?
Okay, here's another thing that my brain is doing, and the people who are going to destroy this app are going to think, how can I cheat? So once you tell me the rules of the democracy or the basketball or the soccer game, I'm like, ooh, what's my competitive edge? So how are the scores made? And how do I cheat? The way that I can know that this is fair is I put on my how do I cheat hat, and I don't get anywhere.
So there's two potential cheaters, right? So there's the Goalibot translators, and then there's there's other people outside the system. But since this system is Gullybot is Gullybot's opinion, and part of that is, those translators are those humans. I was just going to call them humans. I don't know. Translators, yeah, we'd probably need to figure out a better word for that. But translators is better than curators. But yeah, so as far as external people cheating the system, they can't because it is a controlled system.
So there's stuff the ballot box. How can we not? How does the system not allow me to stuff the ballot box?
The only one that can put something in the system is the translators. So the most you're doing is stuffing the ballot box is just tweeting at Gullybot so much that we don't have time to find the real tweets. But that's not stuffing the
no,
ballot
that's like
box,
more
that's
like
distraction.
there's like overwhelm
I'm just saying that they can't stuff the ballot box, but they can
the
the
curator,
right.
Which is like a DDoS attack.
Right.
But stuffing the
the
ballot
closest you
box
can
is
get.
like putting a bunch of claims underneath a claim, and then like
Right. But
because the
since they
score
can't enter
just
data in the
naively
system, right. But no one can do that.
right. So then it goes like this, where like the only way that that doesn't happen is that these people have more power. So like the translators, in order to keep the cheaters, you have the referees. So now I need to trust the referees.
Well, yes, right. But everything the referees do in this case, as opposed to other systems, is the scoring is fully derivable and transparent. So they're not making a judgment call that is not visible. It's fully transparent. It's just not easy to read at the moment because we don't have a great way of explaining it or visualizing it. But it is in there, and that's where we need to get to make it more visible.
I feel like
Okay.
oh, go on.
Oh, no, go ahead, Matt.
I feel like to support that, because if it's visible only if you're looking or digging through it, people tweeting at Gullybot, then it's not really visible. So the only way I think that would hold water would be if there is a list of or tweets that weren't included.
Well, so yeah, yeah. Well, so you can search, and I actually do have a button for that on Twitter. The way you can search under each claim in Twitter itself.
Sorry, I just got
Dyslexia and
excited. They
typing.
finally put the cardinality arrows, or the cardinality like arrowheads on Miro arrows. Just like, so we can now do proper ER diagrams,
Oh, really? That's cool.
which is like such a nerd thing, but it's been requested for a long time.
So I don't probably have a good example in here, but if anyone wanted to, for any claim, since it's in Twitter, they can search on the URL link. And so any what's that, the Miro board link? Any tweets that anyone sent to Gullybot has, if they use it properly, has a link to it, so they could then search. But at least it's there. Like, it's not easy, but if some researcher wanted to go and say, has Gullybot been listening to people? They could do an analysis.
Yeah, those are two different thresholds. The researching the transparency of it in some like official capacity versus the do I trust this because I can see it easily capacity.
Well, yeah, right. But I mean, once again, we're just trying to get the system 1% better. So Snopes, where every communication with Snopes is 100% logged, is better than Snopes is today.
So you're saying that somewhere on this interface, there's So somewhere on this interface, there's a history of
The history is on
curator
Twitter.
/ referee activity.
Not necessarily. No, but everything exists on Twitter. So if anyone wanted to go look it up, they could. You
Even the
interface with
correspondence
Golibot
between
on
a
Twitter.
curator and a claim tweeter.
Well, what I'm saying is that you can look and see, oh, someone tweeted that at Golibot. Did Golibot put it in here? But then you have to go and look for it and say, oh, right now as it is, like we could enhance the system to track that better or to say what tweets we got it from. But right now it's just you can look at the tweet and then you can go in here and look to see whether it's in here.
Well, yeah, it's gradations of transparency.
And there's limitations on what can be done. So we're just looking at a slight increase over quality over what's there. Not
Right.
We're not building a perfect system.
Where I'm a little bit hung up is that how do I trust so starting with like, why do I find this valuable? Like, do I trust that this isn't manipulable or a waste of people's time because either a bunch of cheaters can rig the ballot box or a bunch of politically motivated moderators can inaccurately translate what I've written or filter it from being contributed for various reasons, of which could be anything from a whole list of reasons like obscenity, vulgarity, etc., like other, political, social, racial sensitivities could be reasons that things might not make it from Twitter into Goli. And then so there's that sort of filtration side of things. And so then there's this question that if there's curators, why do I trust the curators? Because like at this point, we've got people on all sides of the political spectrum,
but
frustrated with
right.
Twitter itself, frustrated with.
Yeah, I mean that's a problem that all news media has. So we're not going to solve that. We're just making it better. So it's the same.
So how do you make it better? That's what I'm asking.
We're just slightly better.
Sure.
So you have Fox News, MSNBC, Snopes, all these different sites, right? What we're doing is we're doing what they're doing. So we're building analysis, except how we come to our scores, like Snopes and the other ones, they give you number of Pinocchios or whatever. I can't remember who does that. And they give you a couple paragraphs that explain why. The improvement over that is that we have an algorithm with all the reasons why that score up. So it's just like 0.1% more trustworthy than them because it's not just written text. And then we also take feedback from people. So we invite people to post on Twitter. So there's a public record of what people said on a specific claim. This claim is wrong because of X or something like that. And then our trust will depend upon how well we are at keeping up with that. So it's not gonna engender perfect trust or great trust or even much better than what's out there, but it is one step better than what's out there today. And those are two improvements in theory. But it's not like we're going to make an ungameable system.
And so when you have I'm trying to find, so like you had the Goli interface. Like if you have that, is there, because it seems to me that part of what you're saying is like
these are some examples.
Yeah, I'm looking for like what's at the top there. Like it seems like you're saying there's kind of like there's the analysis, which is what I'm getting, what I'm viewing here. This is the analysis.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind kind of the whole conversation or the raw conversation, which is a compilation of tweets that have been that have created this. So there's the entire corpus of tweets forever that have come at Goaliebot with this hashtag or whatever that could also be viewed
At a later
either
stage.
separately or
that'd
in
probably-
relation to.
yeah. That would be another improvement to the trust scale. But
Mhm.
I don't, until we actually know whether the algorithm works, I wouldn't want to add that
Is
feature.
one of these claims that are sitting here in the analysis, like, does it link one-to-one to a tweet, or does it link one to many tweets?
It'd be many to many. Because most people don't phrase a single claim per tweet.
So when in their tweet, they would claim in a single tweet, they might make multiple claims.
Yeah.
And then the curator, whatever, translates those into either compiling them into prior claims or.
Yeah.
See, to me, the thing that I feel like I would want is to understand, like, the thing that's missing in this system that is not just the scoring, it's like the human intervention that I don't understand. Like how does it get, like, if I tweet, it doesn't necessarily like just show up there.
Right.
So I kind of want to know, like, do I just read this? Am I just like, first off, a consumer? How do I refute a particular claim? I just sort of toss it to a translator, toss it up to the curator sort of by the tweet and just say, at a certain point, I'm kind of like, well, yeah, how do I contribute to it? And then it shows up, or, because in a way it almost then, isn't it just like curators doing research on tweets and then compiling them into a,
It's
into an
99%.
analysis?
It's 99% that. This is researchers doing research and putting it into an explainer that explains it well. That's the 99% of it, right? Is that this is an explainer you can read, and the value you get is more just, oh, I have a broader understanding of the situation. And people will trust it more or less depending on how accurate we are, that when they come to this, they see all their concerns existing in it. And then on top of that, bonus wise, is if we're missing something, there'll be a button to tweet it. And then we, in theory, would respond to that tweet saying, oh, we added it and it changed the score. Or we could respond to the tweet saying, hey, we already have that in there. It's just over here. You can't see it. Yeah. So that's how the process would work in theory. And to your extent, then people can do a DDoS attack by just over tweeting us, but we'd probably block them. But.
So the first thing that a person does is read or search, like read/search.
I imagine, yeah, most of the time they would be sent a link by somebody, or if they're having an argument on Twitter, Goaliebot, we may intervene as Goaliebot and say, hey, here's our analysis on why we say this is, and here's my confidence. So they would get a link to a page, and so they would be reading it. And 99% of the people will just read and not give feedback. And that's okay.
And then right then and there, if they're going to make an interaction with something, I'm seeing tweet about this claim.
Yeah, so that's one of the pieces that we need to work out in the UI, is how to make this more obvious to say. So if this claim is wrong, so rather than just tweet about this claim, if this claim is wrong, you know, yeah, how do we kind of handle that interaction, asking them that's wrong? But in theory, right now, it'd just be tweet about this claim. They fill out the tweet and then we respond to it. it'd be nice to like in the future maybe ask them, you know, are you saying it's too high? Are you saying it's too low? But I guess really the first step, you know, the interactions with Gullybot, maybe in, I mean, we're kind of almost out of time today, but maybe the main thing is to just get the reading experience working and then worry about the interaction later, or the feedback loop. Because it will be interacting a bit to exploring it, but the trying to feed Gullybot. I mean, it's important information to know, like you said, for trust, but I guess I'm not so, the first experiment is, do people understand it? And it'll, you know, people will trust it or not, depending on how good we are at making sure that it's full of everything. It has, if it properly expresses the person's concern and they can find it, then they'll trust it. The second order effect is you know, interactions and stuff. So all that's yeah, I mean, all that's useful and we'll make it better, but we got to start somewhere.
So Matt, here is another book recommendation. I can send you a
Visualization,
link.
analysis, and design.
This is
Note
like
it down.
the data visualization, like one of the Bibles of it. I'm looking at this one where I'm like, these particular use cases where it's like here, location known, location unknown, target known, target unknown, and you've got those three different activities of like locate, look up, browse, and explore. And I'm curious about locate, look up, browse, and explore as like 4 different user stories that might be there's definitely going to be each of those user stories. The question is sort of like, in which order would you maybe care to prioritize those user stories? Like for example, lookup is somebody that knows that they've been there before. They know that there's a claim and a counterclaim, and they're like, I'm going to go hit Gullybot to go get that counterclaim so I can send it to my uncle or that guy at the bar.
Yeah.
And so they get back to it really quick. So they might use the search to get into there. They might have, you know, in later versions, they might have a bookmark my favorites or a bookmark my
Yeah.
claims.
And in theory, there'd be a search somewhere up here at some point.
And that's
At the for the first experiment, we're only going to have 5, so we'll probably just list all 5 of them on the home screen.
yeah, and I think like lookup and locate would be basically serviced by the same minimum viable what you have there, search. When I'm thinking about browse and explore, I'm wondering what's that user story? Is that more the like the first time, the person who sent a link? What brings somebody in under that kind of user story? And is that one that you're looking to support?
It doesn't seem to fit. I mean, it doesn't seem to fit any of those, unless you consider it exploring. Maybe it's exploring. But yeah, I mean, that would be the main kind of use case. The primary one is they're sent a link to a specific debate.
Mm-hmm. So then there's me, the user, and then there's my uncle. What's the my uncle story? I get a link to a claim and I end up seeing
you get a link. Yeah, so if it's you and your uncle, then you would go on, you'd find the vaccine one, which would be probably because it's just on the homepage, and then you would tweet your uncle this link, and then so your uncle would start here. And so this is the main UX that we want to design for, is what's this experience?
The uncle story.
Yeah.
and I don't drop my uncle into some subsection, some subclaim.
So you can do that. And that may be a more advanced scenario. I don't think I'd want to tackle that first off.
And so then also here, I'm guessing then the next step here is clicking more info.
Yeah, and that is not intuitive. This thing that needs to, so these are, yeah, so on this screen, this is the, what, what's not, some of this stuff isn't answered, but what is Gullybot for? How do I read the scores? How is the score derived? So like, even like, what does Gullybot think about this? What's the answer to the analysis? Right now, it's just written text. But there's a lot of potential kind of UIs that we might want to change this around. Like someone had said, like I have a lot of explanation text in the first thing. And someone said, well, maybe it should be like a trainer thing to where it says, like it could have the score up here and just say 76% and then have a little pop-up that pops up and says, hey, this is Gullybot's score. 76% means confident. Or here's the scale or something like that. So, and then this thing actually, oh, here it is, actually. So if you feel I'm incorrect, please look through the reasons below and tell me what I am missing. But the problem is a lot of people didn't even read this, as you imagine, as you can probably imagine. What I'm missing, tell me on Twitter or anonymously. So that's the other way they can communicate if they really don't want to do it on
well,
Twitter.
the thing that,
and I'm not saying I thought they would read it. I'm just saying I had to put something on the screen to kind of get it working. And so I did a bad design and now we're designing the better design.
it also looks maybe like you're kind of making it look like a conversational chat thing.
Yeah, so that's a design decision that we can change, but
yeah,
in
it's kind of like
theory,
a text message thread.
Yeah, in theory, the purple ones are agreeing with the main statement, the orange ones are cons, and in theory, the conversation is between Gullybot and Skeptibot. But what I don't have is we could put icons of them up there and it's, hey, I'm Gully, I'm Skepti, and then they know the purple is Gully. But the whole reason for that design though is just to say, and I don't know if I even have it on here. I don't. Okay, so this is something I didn't explain very well. I think when someone's coming to this and they're looking at this huge long list of claims, they want to know which claims are pro and which claims are con of the main statement, not of their parent. And so that's why purple for one side and orange for the other. But that could be a wrong assumption, both on the priority of what they want to know and also the way to express it.
Yeah, I mean, there's this whole field of study on motivated reasoning, which is really pretty brutal.
Yeah, but also if you want to know whether or not you can trust Gullybot, the first thing you want to say is that, oh, I think his score is bogus. Why does he think that? I'm going to look at okay, so if I think the score is false, well, okay, let's see. If Gully's confident in it, but I'm not, I'm going to want to look for things to debunk. So I'm going to look at the purple things to figure out what to debunk. Or I guess I might want to look at the orange things and say, are they missing something? Are these orange things, are these all the pros that I have to debunk Gullybot? And then what was the other thought? Or are one of these pros in here, like this one has no bucket, has no importance. So I think this is true. So now I know I need to like dig deeper into this one. So that was the thought on that design choice, but any of that could change. None of that's been done. And some other kind of design choices is it starts off closed, so they're not confused by it, by being a wall of text. But I do have the option to start it off open. Because maybe we want to, maybe that's easier to understand the scoring if it's already open. Are they going to be overwhelmed by it? I don't know.
I'm doing a mock-up here. I could continue. You know me, Bentley, like I get the
Yeah,
dog bone in my mouth and I'll like work on this for 3
that's why I
hours.
invited you.
But
I know this is your addiction. I'm gonna use it.
tell me, I mean, I would love to just work through a few things here if we could extend time-wise. I know,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
um,
actually, I think we had till 1, right? I had 2 hours.
let me
Yeah,
just
so
double
we're good.
check that.
You have 30 minutes, and then we'll probably have another one. If I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
taking
yeah,
too much
yeah.
of
We
your
got
time.
some more time here. I would love to actually, tinker down here. I think there's some of those earlier things, sort of like how the system works, I think is a piece of this.
Mhm.
There's let me see this thing. Chink. So I'm over on, yeah, you see me tinkering
Yeah.
with stuff here.
And I don't know if it would be helpful. So I thought it'd be nice to have Gullybot and Skeptabot,
Visualized.
visually on the screen. I don't want to mess up your design unless you're okay with it, but
I think we'll get there. You're gonna get you're gonna find challenge in maybe at the top. And
yeah, like you
that's a
could
good
have
way to get,
like kind of like that, but
yeah, at
and
the
then give
top.
them
And then
those-
I think I was basically like, that could work. That can basically fill in for quote unquote a key, but a
Mhm.
key is definitely something missing. Like, what's the color? The first thing I'm doing is I'm finding white on really saturated purple and orangish yellow to be like oppressive, and it makes me it's like tough to read. It's also using up a lot of like
visual
chroma.
power. Mhm.
Yeah, it's like yep, visual power. It's just this like high beam of color that's kind of not necessary, where if we did like a deep stroke or like a thick stroke around the claim.
Yeah, I'm just wondering when you zoom back, whether it's easy to see. Yeah, I guess it's still pretty easy. When you have a whole bunch of things, they all kind of like, but yeah. Oh, and the other thing is I don't know how to make these arrows
With CSS.
with CSS with it being a border around the whole thing. I'd have to design an SVG for it, but keep going. We'll figure that out. Let's not be limited by technology.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not even sure you would need them. Frankly, like,
yeah,
I think you might actually use other indicators for, like, it's kind of extraneous in my opinion. Like, it doesn't,
and they're so small, most people don't even see
you're
them.
already using yellow to indicate, you're already using the color channel to like indicate the, oh dude, you're gonna love this. You're gonna love what I'm gonna do. Putting in lorem ipsum,
Oh,
2
and
sentences worth. Oh, flip it. Oh, you punk. How did I
and
do
also
that,
just to
Bentley?
say is that we can choose a completely different UI construction. So I don't know if you've even thought or agree, like it could be a scale, right? Although there are problems with that, but it could be 2 scales with boxes on it that you can see one side has more than the other and stuff. So
Yeah.
don't feel limited by this chat concept.
Well, the thing that I'm also thinking is that here's something you get when we do this with the stroke, is the fill becomes useful for a different reason. So I could be like, I could use this to indicate a different thing, like when the system talks, or when or I don't know that this is necessary, but the other thing is that the horizontal spacing, you know, here, it's trying to see that update on your end slowly, but that horizontal spacing can also indicate, you know, segments. I'm thinking that the unintuitive issue of like, gross, that's a little better. The unintuitiveness of, what does this guy say? He says, if you disagree, scan the sub claims, scan all the claims that make me think this, and then maybe that even has an action to it. I'm not entirely sure what I did there for the purpose of that purple, but it is sort of like, two things I would do is like, there might be additionally something like that where the claim text is distinguished somehow as, what are you doing? I said lock, punk. There we go. All right. What are you doing? Are you kidding me? Oh, did my, uh-oh. No. Sorry. So here we go. Sorry. So you could have, what is that? That's 24. It's almost like being able to have primary text and help text. I don't know that this would constitute one that would be not the same. But like, there's like, you have as well, you've got kind of like tweet this claim, click more, those which are like, that's like a different class of communication, which is kind of like a UI communication. That's like a help text. It's like a supporting
And
text. Maybe
think,
this would be that. This would be click the more info.
yeah, I think we're gonna have a lot of that in the future, like on the Reasons Core site. So this one is editable. So, but like more like information on this scoring, like maybe it doesn't appear until they open up, until they have this one selected. So yeah, having when it's selected, it's showing more information either inside the thing or outside the thing. I don't know if having it be a whole separate statement or bubble is good, but yeah, it needs to be designated different, and they need to know that all this conversation is subordinate to the claim and isn't about its children.
Yeah, the main thing I think is that, like, if I come over and here, let me actually just share my screen. So
Yeah.
if I come over to here, basically like this, hold on, let me get the, okay. Let's see. Come on now. Oh, I'm sharing the wrong screen.
Yeah.
Here, how about my calendar? All right, so here, so this is the primary claim. I want that to stand out really big. I'm almost like
in even some of that info, like based on 55 claims, that it's really just the I am confident that you should take the COVID
bingo.
vaccine.
Look at this.
Yeah.
So I reverse that. I am 75% confident that you should take the vaccine, and that this would be bold.
Mhm.
And then it states its evidence, and so you, that stands out, and you almost might make it a separate line. This is,
But all that could also be in that little sub box down there.
exactly.
Or, yeah, so
Mhm.
how far and how close that is something that we need to brainstorm on. It'd be nice if there's a little explainer, like if you select any of them down there, and this isn't, I mean, it is one of the options in the system, where then it would explain how it got the scoring on whichever one you have open. Um, and like
Mhm.
also, yeah, the tweetings, be able to tweet or give feedback or whatever, have that explanation. I mean, so there's the pros and cons of if it's not visible on every one, people may not realize it's there. But if we put it on every one, the UI will be so overwhelming. But yeah, that's interesting having it pop up. And it's not separate.
What if it is in here?
Oh, I was muted.
What are you
Uh,
talking?
I started and then realized that it wasn't getting the response I expected. You can have the full explanation for like, this is based on the 55 claims below, and then just a briefer version of that for every subsequent one to expand out based off of your 13 child claims, and it just keeps going down with the lower nodes.
Right. I mean, there is a way that potentially the statement that it makes, I don't know if this is what you're saying, but like that the statement that it makes becomes the interaction point. This is based on 55 claims, and that
It would fit to me as the interaction point since it directly feeds into one, how much information there is for people to look at if they expand, two, what the point at which they would want to expand based on the information.
you could just have a link icon that may just indicate
Oh,
what
and
it's
that's,
supposed
yeah,
to do.
so also you have kind of tweet this claim, but we
Mhm.
also want tweeting to be an interaction. I guess we'd have two different tweets. Like one is give feedback on the claim and one is share the claim.
Mhm.
And I don't know if those need to be separate or whatever, but that's something to consider.
Is it refute this claim is one of the things you would tweet, or promote this claim?
Yeah.
Or like, am I wrong?
Well, I want, yeah, so one is like just you want to share it, you want to promote it. But the other one is I disagree because, or this is wrong. But also what's interesting is they could be disagreeing with the claim. They could be disagreeing with the confidence score. Like maybe 76 isn't high enough. So I don't know if there's a good word that says, it may just be give goalie feedback on this claim. And then there's like a share or tweet.
I really do like
Yeah,
to ask the
maybe it
question,
isn't.
am I wrong? Invite them to convince them otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong? No, Donnie, you're not wrong. You're just an asshole. Tweet this claim. Okay, so right.
Anyway, we can work on that interaction
It
panel.
seems to me there is something going on here that looks like whoops, that's, what are you doing? Is that real? Okay, there's interact with claim, and there's which may or may not happen through Twitter, and then there's actually like promote claim. bigger. So like interact with claim. What are the there's actually, let me go here. So like so the promoting the claim is I agree, well, share the claim. This is, there's promote, I agree, there's send link to uncle,
Yeah.
who's our persona of my disagreeer. There's refute. So this is like kind of more public. There's kind of two versions of this, two classes. There's a private and a public version of this. Send link to uncle is private. Promote, I agree. Privately, I send a link to an uncle. Interacting with the claim, what do we have? We have like refute it. We have refute. We have like promote, but that's like, and then there's different, it's like the confidence, the importance, the
Number.
process.
Yeah.
Like,
And we kind of already have it in there somewhere, but yeah, like the number of child claims data, it's really kind it's data about the score.
mhm.
And we may like display it, but there may be a deeper step that goes in and says, okay, now tell me in like a paragraph how you scored this thing.
Mhm.
I don't know. You may not get that far.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not, it's not this, I'm kind of like thinking maybe we want to make a few versions. If it's not like tweet and link, we could have some kind of what is it? Is it like a feedback drop down, or in just an engage, or
Yeah.
is
It'd
that
be interesting to have something that's like share, engage, or more info.
share, engage, more info?
Of course, engage in more info sounds similar, but it's kind of like affect, change. Although they can't change directly, but so it's like give feedback, explore deeper on the specific claim, or share it. Yeah, I don't know. Just brainstorming. I don't know.
I don't know exactly. So share, so what is the third one you said? More info? What does that
Yeah,
mean?
I'm
Is that
thinking it
actually
might
the
be a need over.
expander, or?
Well, so yeah, there's two ways to get more info. One is to just look at the child claims, but one is that data about this claim,
Uh-huh.
which, yeah, that's confusing because I use the term more info in a different way on the actual website. But I was thinking in this case, it would be more like, if I want to see details on this scoring for this claim that's unrelated to its like it's the statistical data about that claim, like how many children, how many pro children, how many descendants, how many pro descendants do I have, stuff like that. I don't know if that's that may not be something we even include in the first version, so I don't know.
Well, so we kind of have that here. So one question is, how is this? What
Yeah,
is this?
Right.
Is this
So-
more info or?
Well, that's the thing, is 55 claims enough?
Yeah, what would we call this? This is a. So there's like the conclusion. There's the claim, and then there's the claim rationale.
Yeah, well,
Claim
it's almost
reasoning. The claim.
Yeah, I mean, the reasoning is the child claim, sort of. So
Like if
that,
I were to-
but it is a way to,
sorry.
that is a button to open it or something. So, yeah, it's kind of a summary of it's really the summary of the rationale.
So it's this particular thing is the summary of the rationale. This is a rationale summary.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
If somebody were to talk about it, they might say analysis.
Yeah.
So this is
It's
written
kind of-
from
yeah.
the voice of Goalybot, at least as of now.
Yeah,
so
well, I mean, almost
would
all of
say,
it's the voice
"I
of
am
Gulliver, but that is
my-"
the meta. That is meta information. Yeah, it's not the claim itself. Yeah.
And then if it's in yellow, it's written from Skeptibot.
Right. Mhm.
Okay.
Although that's interesting because the purple, with that purple box would exist in the yellow box as well, or in the orange box, and it would say the same thing. It wouldn't necessarily be. Yeah, so this is where it gets kind of confusing with the whole using Goalybot as purple and Skeptibot as orange, and this may need to change it because of this. But
I mean, if we wanted to
Those-
change what color it is, it's a pretty easy CSS flag.
well, I mean, the concept of using. I'm not saying the colors. I'm saying the concept of Skeptibot saying some things and Goalybot saying some things, because within the Skeptibot claims, that same my analysis, like that Goalybot thing has my analysis includes the Skeptibot claims at the bottom, so it's a bit confusing.
You're saying that
Yeah.
right. So then this, I'm almost wondering if it's like, okay, so based on these claims I've been told so far. So let's see, what do you have going on over here? These things all lead to it.
Mhm.
And you say based on, okay, based on the 55 claims. So for example, so my analysis, what do you have? So you basically have so this is claim and rationale summary, and then you have engagement. It's kind of a call to action, and then it's the then it's kind of engagement help text. Right.
Yeah.
And in a way, there's two don't think we want to play the font game for the two different voices, but I'm okay. So I am 76% confident you should take the vaccine. My analysis is based on 55 claims that have been told so far. So this is the analysis. The analysis. I'm thinking. So this is saying to click for more. There's all the claims, there's 55 claims. There's a bunch of points here where
Yeah,
we would basically want to expand.
Yeah.
Because really, this is the claim. This is a call to browse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right here.
And now, I initially put that on the very top claim only just because it wasn't obvious on how to expand the claims. And so the UX, just like putting that arrow down there could make it where we don't need that whole second sentence.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'm wondering.
Yeah.
See, part of me is like, do it like this. Part of me thinks like, do it more like flip these. Get rid of that. But I think this is going to be like, this one suffers a different level of illogic. Because when we say 55 claims, it's like, don't we want to? No, you have to back up your stuff immediately. This is far more, the left side is far more logical than this one. The expand my subclaims, you currently have a line here. I'm wondering if it almost doesn't look like almost like this or this. That doesn't quite make sense.
And I've toyed with also like putting the number of child claims or total, like 55 is the total descendant number of claims. So that could be like, that arrow could be like a purple shape or something that looks like an arrow, and then it says 55.
Yeah, so I'm thinking,
or it could have the text click,
yeah,
based on the 55 claim. Although you're right, that needs to be higher. But
what if we had something?
Although maybe
more
that
like,
sentence only needs to exist on the very top one, because once they understand that concept, it doesn't need to exist on all the children.
What if it's like, let me put this back in. And I'm almost wondering if this isn't the thing that gets the.
Yeah. And you could do all of them, because I think it disappears when that thing isn't claimed anymore.
It could be like something like, I think this might be what you're saying. And then there's something that should indicate whether it's
Oh, that's already
like
open.
what state
Okay.
it's in here, if
Yeah.
it's expanded or not. Is there a reason? I mean, it could be simply this. I don't know that it needs too much
Yeah, just
belaboring here.
rotated.
Could be that versus that.
And we could
And
even have
then-
the 55 claims disappear if it's open, because, I don't know.
Interesting, yeah. Well, no, I think it's useful to know the lineage. Then you've got this question of your line, which I think is nice. I think that's really helpful as it would go through. The question is, yeah, should it be gray in essence that like strikes through? I'm kind of tempted to think that like almost in a sense that this line, that next line that is generated has something to do with the expansion. And that we like mentally connect that.
Oh, and we're about out of time.
There is something like about this existing, something almost like this existing outside of my box that says there should be stuff here. Like if this wasn't here and I've got a few more claims. The thing that I haven't done here, Matt, is like, okay, now that I've sort of drawn, now that I've gone to the length of like drawing like kind of a lovely case, it's probably like what I would do is go back with a pass and be like, how can I really distill this down to something that's going to be easily codable without losing some of the value that we've generated. So that's another thing that's on my mind here is like, but the thing that I think is really key that we're doing here is I think making sure that these are really legible. I'm almost like really giving the claims, let them be the thing that you can scan, because we need to be able to scan. Read. We also want to make sure that we can keep the connection. I'm almost like this, that what this is related to. There might also be like jumps to parent, or like once I'm in an iPhone, it might be like, well, what am I actually refuting here? I can follow the lineup, but is there like a jump to the prior claim that might almost look like a little circle here? I don't know. I'm kind of making stuff up here. I'm probably putting use cases that don't exist. This one, I do think though that this first question of like, well, why do I, if we're not going to have it already expanded, why do I click it? And how do I know? So this, let's go back and make this the state. I do something like, well, this just doesn't exist. Never mind. So let's pretend that this is our prior state. So we've got this, and we've got this. So what I was actually thinking is there's like, the other way of thinking about this, Bentley, is that like, maybe 55 claims is not like an internal organ to this claim. It's like more like the provocation of somehow it like lives out here as like it beckons somewhere outside of the thing. I mean, it
Yeah.
does belong to this thing, so you'd think, yeah, it probably ought to be in here. But I'm
We also
wondering if
could-
it's more like
Yeah.
out here connected to me are 55 claims.
Yeah, we also need to think about it, what it's going to look like when there's 10 of them on the screen. Is it
Each
gonna
with
get
their,
confusing?
well, on an iPhone, for example, you may not get more than a couple on the screen at
Well,
any
so
one time.
I would think that we wouldn't like the feedback, share more info, and the my analysis wouldn't be visible on one unless it's a selected state. But
Uh-huh.
that depends. I don't know in what you've been thinking, whether you've
Okay, I
been
see what you're
thinking
saying.
there is a selected state or not. You know what I'm saying?
No, I think it's totally I think that's totally viable.
And then they'd be a
And
lot smaller. But then, yeah, do you want 55 claims and then 25 claims and then 30 claims? You know, is that too much info? Or after the parent one, I mean, it could just say the number of claims if it's in selected state, and otherwise it's just the arrow. But I'm wondering if you have 2 or 3 right after each other and they each have the arrow on the outside, will it be confusing which? I mean, sure, you can put that arrow right next to the one above. But yeah,
Mhm.
definitely having it outside is a definite option. That's one of the things I've been toying with. I didn't want them on the left, which is traditional on a hierarchy, because it takes up quite a bit of screen real estate on a phone. So I kind of like at the bottom the way you have it.
right. There's also so in the case that I click, if I click this, then I get these,
Yeah.
yeah, or, and then I would also need an indicator for the state of expanded and non-expanded.
Mhm.
So selected state, unselected state, and then there's expanded, unexpanded, and then there's the, you know, not a state, but there's the expander interaction. Expand or interactions. Ultimately, it looks like maybe we're tinkering with a few.
Yeah, it's a bit bizarre that, yeah, how do you select something? You have to expand it. That's a bit confusing. The way I have
Yeah.
it right now in my design, you have 2 things that causes
Yeah.
confusion. So how about
Interesting.
we schedule some more time? And
Mhm.
I'm sure your brain will work on this a little bit between now and then.
Yeah. And really, when you do right now, the way that you've got it, kind of, it's like
Yeah, it intends some.
you're doing an indent, which is pretty cool. Yeah, we can schedule more time.
Yeah, I think
But,
the indent is mostly useful if it is grouping things by which they're parent and child of.
Yeah. Which is where we're at. So on
But should we put a pause at this point? I don't have to go
Yeah.
anywhere, but if we are trying to stick to the
If
the
you
time.
need to drop off, Max and I can finish up, or you can. Well, yeah, we'll be.
Yeah, I
shutting
mean,
down in a second.
I have to pivot into doing some other work. Let's just see if there's a natural resting point here. That's so things that we explored here. Let's like kind of just, this is the selected, unselected. We're sort of like tinkering with that concept here. Expanded, unexpanded, we're tinkering with that here. And here, I think, you know, what is it that we do to evoke, you know, clicking? Is it, you know, so that's, and then the expanded, unexpanded is related to the indented very clearly, right? Because each of these is essentially a branch, and you're, you know, working it fairly linearly, and you've done indented, but did you feel like, you know, so then there's some other questions that pop up whether or not this should basically do that and just, you know, squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, which seems like that eventually will fail, or might very quickly fail.
Yeah.
So you'll probably need a side scroll sort of indentation. You know, this line, maybe, you know, I'm curious about playing like more heavily with it. I'm not exactly sure why, but and I'm also not sure if there's like a game that can be played here with like gradations. It's kind of an unlimited amount of nestability here, but maybe you could play within the confines where you almost know where you're at by the, like how high you are towards the top by how saturated your line is. These of course would be in the background. And hypothetically, you could make them interactable where they would send you to the parent. But I'm not sure if that's useful or intuitive. Different ideas that that like helping somebody anchor, because once I'm like zoomed in, I no longer know my context. I lose the context of my parent, and I lose the context of maybe how far I am in. And hypothetically, actually, you would see this potentially be like that. I'm kind of drawing a little, Bentley, almost on Visual Studio Code.
Yeah, right.
Where like I'm in some context, and since we're not using their crazy color scheme, you'd have like, I know that I'm a little ways in, or even just having them all be here. I'm like, oh, I know I'm 3 layers in, even if you didn't have different shades of gray. It could just be the same. Maybe it's this medium side, this, not the darkest shade, but this one here. And you could see how, oh, I'm 3 deep. So I'm 3 deep here. This must mean, you know, I'm down in it. And maybe you could make the line interactive. So when I come over to it, it would like put me up to the top. It would like shoot me back up to the top, and then I could, and then I'm thinking that this somehow, this line and this collapser interaction, you know, it's like when I click this thing animates up from its bottom, just like it. And then this next one will naturally be on the next line.
Yeah.
Here, so that, and I don't know if is it any, would this be of value? Is this weird or like illogical if we made this?
Purple, the corresponding color. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
That I'm refuting that prior thing, or if I'm purple on purple, it's saying I'm
Supporting it.
supporting it.
Yeah.
And so then you can kind of like follow your logic as you go. So the one that would come out of here, like technically this wouldn't exist here. This would only start down here.
Yeah.
And then this would be orange. I know some, you're going, oh, the CSS, oh, the fuck. Like, how do we do this? How's it gonna, it's gonna be gnarly,
Worry
but
about that later. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I guess what I'm exploring here is that that there is a logical connection between these elements and the thing that happens next, which is that, so what I was saying when you jumped out, Matt, is like, I was just going back to this one idea here, which is that like, this is our expander element. And when I click it, it, either instantaneously turns or animates or whatever. And this either instantaneously shows up or animates. But I was tinkering with gray, but then I was like, well, wait a second, isn't it kind of an extension of purple that basically is like, okay, I'm purple, I'm a claim, I'm going to send a line of me down through concept space. Am I wrong? Who's showing up? Well, orange shows up. And then if a purple shows up, it's like, oh, I'm in support of that purple line. And if I'm orange, it's like I'm in like an enemy of that line. I feel like that will actually give, if that's not illogical, I feel like that would add like intuition to the interface. Like, oh, I'm an orange on a purple line. And then when I expand my claims down here, I'm going to get an orange line to which there will be, purples. And
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
That's a really good idea. That solves a lot of the issues we'd had about communicating what is in opposition to what.
Yeah, I think it certainly adds to, I think, some of the explanation of how these things are supporting and relating and rolling up. And then the other thing is like, we've got 55 claims, but like the other thing that's kind of interesting is this is possibly a really valuable place to do like, this could be a small summary space of like, the purple weight and the orange weight beneath me or whatever. Because now this is my this bottom section is like my node's like interface with the rest of my relationships. And so that's where I would probably store and display like a readout of what's going on here. So I don't know what goes here, but it would be like, well, so in actuality, I don't know if this is the case, but I might be like, this is like 83 something, and then this is -7 or something.
Yeah, it doesn't quite follow that, but yeah.
But you could do a thing like this.
There's a lot of kind of summary explanations of the scoring that we could do.
You could stick in here.
Yeah,
right?
we have to decide whether it always shows or whether it only shows when that item's selected or opened or whatever.
Right, and it also could just live here like this.
Yeah.
For a good period, for like generally it could just be here as like, it's a little bigger than something like that, where you could get
a lot
thing.
of good ideas, and I think we have a lot more we could explore and think around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think kind of expanding from here.
Yeah,
But this is good. I feel like this
good
is,
progress.
yeah, and probably like there's something that maybe it's in the more info. I'm trying to think all the way back to our initial things of like trust building, where it's either up here or you know, in a total like explainer. I don't know. I think the main thing is that there's probably that whole introduction experience that doesn't look. I feel like the uncle story maybe needs less of that, or I think they need to get to it, but I think the first person that like engages with it might need to know it a bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to think through that.
Stuff to think through.
Yeah.
I don't know if the
Alright.
search is just persistent and sits on the top or sits on the bottom, or is on like if you're mobile, it like shows when you do change directions or something,
Yeah.
and then it unfolds. But cool. Well,
Cool, man.
sweet.
I'll
Should we
find
schedule
some more
time now or
time.
do another? You can sort of repeat process.
Yeah, so I'll find some time. I mean, we might just try and do it next week on Tuesday again.
Yeah, I think that
if
should
you're
work for me.
available.
Just double check. Yeah. You've got something at 10 my
Yeah,
time.
we have a regular meeting, so we're just having you come in during our regular meeting. So cool, man. Well, I appreciate your brainstorming so far and future work.
Yeah.
And we'll see if we can get this thing whipped into some usable shape.
Yeah, man.
People are just confused when they see it and say it's not working. It's like, we didn't even click the more info button. You didn't read. But that's understandable.
Yeah. The other thing I was drawing, but like I kind of think is important sometimes for user stories is the activity diagram of like is user A, user B, that gets into the real nitty gritty of the like each down to the click and the send and the whatnot, but like and then carving out sort of like chunks of story, the like the send and the like the share and the refute and the thing like that. So you have these little processes that sort of put in here. This person sends this, and then this person gets a yikes. This person gets a thing, and then they click it, and then this happens, and then the system does something, and then they come back, and then that type of thing. But I think if the basic user story, if one of the basic user stories is like the first person locates, and a locate and a share.
Yeah, I think we're, for now, just to keep the scope manageable, we're gonna, like, we can trigger the future things, like how to share to Twitter and how to share some feedback, but make, fully solving that full loop, I think will take a while of experimentation. So just kind of getting this first experience right is kind of the first thing.
Yeah.
And even kind of assuming that they'd found it somewhere. It may even be Goalybot sharing it in an existing debate. And so then the main thing is, yeah, what's that experience like when someone comes to the site and they don't know what Goalybot is? Yeah, do we need an explainer at the top above all the stuff we
Yeah.
just
I think the explainer is critical
Yeah.
to to what degree, of depth, given that you're in experimentation stages. But I think at least, and I'm not clicking this, the about whatever, there's the landing page experience, like first discovery, trust building, and engagement number one. The thing I'm still left kind of curious about is like, well, I can understand just going to it, accepting it, finding something, and then sharing it to my uncle. I don't understand the tweet at it curator story and like how that works. And then the like the rules, the referee, like what can I expect of the referees on the playing field? Like, how do I know the other players aren't gaming the system? How do I trust that it's safe for me to put my information in, or that whole thing? Because it apparently, I sort of thought more of a Kialo thing where I like submit a claim and it just goes up there. I didn't know that it was curated by curators. And if curators are there, then it comes with the baggage of the connotations of moderators, which comes with the baggage of like political motivations, which comes with, so then it's like, how do we work our way out of that, which is 1% better than like, Facebook, but Facebook has like a billion-dollar team of multi-million-dollar team of humans doing,
Well,
moderation
the main
machine.
comparison is Snopes or PolitiFact more than Facebook.
And then are they not transparent about the way that they work?
They have a paragraph, but they don't. There's no process. There's no documented process.
It's not algorithmic.
Okay, so then
So-
it sounds.
But even
Sounds-
if it wasn't algorithmic, it's not a documented process, even if it's not automated. So yeah,
That's okay. So that's exactly where I'm pointing at, which is that like to be 1% better than Snopes or PolitiFact, you need to document the process, which is, in my opinion, kind of a bit like this. This is my diagrammatic version of it, but the like step by step, I submit, you submit, then a curator does this, and then you have to really get the trust. I can understand if this is going to be like Bentley's friends and family who are going to trust it based on Bentley says, please test this out. But live in the world of skeptihumans, it's going to be like, I kind of want to know. And then also, I don't have a lot of time to read. I'm going to skip it if it's not presented to me well. So it's actually kind of its own hard UI communication challenge of like, how does it work? Explaining the rules of the game, like picture like opening a board game. Like you can lose most of the possible players of a board game if you do not get through the instructions. Like I've opened some strategy games with people and it's been like, okay, no, this is way too much to get into. And so you have this like getting somebody into the engagement loop or getting somebody to the point of trust and understanding succinctly is an actual hard problem. I would say it is more the first. It might be more the first problem than necessarily the specifics of the UI.
Yeah, but trust is also something you build over time. In
True.
most systems, and that's okay.
Then at a minimum, we should have, usefulness and like how it works.
Yeah. Right. So I mean, we want that initial landing page to be as trustworthy as possible, but we know that there's just a finite we can do on it. So yeah, I mean, and like, yeah. So explaining the scoring and explaining the process on getting information in is something that has to happen. But I think that, that all still comes kind of after creating the better we can make the initial user experience of that landing page might solve some of those. Because if we we probably won't be able to, but if we can make it to where you're looking at this thing, it's like, oh, I see how the scoring works, then we don't need an explainer if it's just intuitive. It probably won't ever be, but but you know, the amount we have to write later on to explain it will be affected by how intuitive this screen is. And we really haven't
Yeah.
even talked about how to display the scores better so that, you know,
Yeah.
rather than 76%.
When I put on my hat of like even the basic user, either the uncle or the other user, I'm still like, how do I make one of these? And so there is this sort of what happens next after. Is it feedback? Is it refute? Is it almost like
Right, but if you're going to Fox News, you don't that's not an expectation. You know what I'm saying? It's a
No?
bonus to be able to interact.
but I'm not going to Fox News.
That's what that's the base understanding. That's the base.
Right. So, right. Kialo is presenting itself as a forum.
Yeah,
Snopes does not present itself as a forum.
right.
Do you want to avoid presenting this as a forum?
Yeah, it's not a forum. Yeah.
But
Or
there's like a
social media.
shadow forum that is Twitter.
Well, no, I mean, it's a news organization. It's a fact-checking news organization that is more transparent and has more feedback than any of the existing ones. And so that may be some of the things, 'cause a lot of times I'm explaining the deeper, like, positive effects, but that's not the primary thing. So that's part of the miscommunication is that I'm explaining, you know, Amazon.com was first books. And I'm explaining, oh, we're going to sell everything and we're going to have a place where you can put stuff on the market. But I really need to kind of pull it back and just say, this is just a 1% better Snopes. And it's a bonus that you can communicate back. This is what GoalieBot thinks. It's, you know, it's Goalie is
Yeah.
MSN or Fox News or whatever.
Well, right. So I guess there's then it's a little bit more, it's less of a forum. Yeah. Somewhere something needs to get trusted. Either an organization needs to get trusted, or an organization can just say like, this is our process, and it's transparent. Trust that. One of the somewhere people need to anchor on, you know, trust, and then also then understand, you know, how to engage with it. Because getting in, you know, just reading it is one of the passes. Then like interacting with it is the next. Like, I disagree with this, I agree with this. If I disagree, then what? And then I'm like, well, then what? Because then I don't know. Then I need to know how it works.
Yeah, but you don't need to know it until then. And I mean, like 90% of the people are going to come and read it. And, you know, 50% of the people are just going to agree with it. And then the other 50% are going to disagree and not care to invest any of it. It'd be nice to grab some of those people that disagree and say, hey, you need to give feedback. But that may be over time, you know.
Yeah.
Not capturing them in the first go. It'll still, you know, that I don't have a high expectation that we'll be able to capture a significant number of people to actually give feedback.
Will it always be like curated? Like ultimately, like it will require researchers and curators?
There's huge problems that I can't figure out how to surmount. So there's no point in creating a system that's not curated. Is what based on the research I've done so far. There's no value in going down building another Kielo just better, because it's too hard of a problem for people to solve through a community model without having experienced people in there. But I'm open to it going that way. I just don't think it'll ever be possible until we have really good AI. But then the AI is the thing that's doing the curation and the
I
moderation.
know. I mean, the thing that's fascinating is like Wikipedia, right? It's like we trust Wikipedia, but we verify, or like, what is our relationship with Wikipedia? It's like, we know that it's possibly fallible, but we like trust it enough and cite it. I mean, there was that
Right,
whole,
and that's the other thing, is that we don't really need them to trust it, like to read it and do what it says.
what
We
do you mean
want
do
them
what it says?
to we don't want them coming to the site and say, Golibot should get a vaccine, and go, oh, I need a vaccine and I'm gonna go get it. It's more like, here's a place where we've distilled all the pros and cons for this issue. And right now the evidence is leaning towards you getting a vaccine. If you don't want to dig any further, then go get a vaccine. If you want to dig further, then here's the reasons why. And if you think it's wrong, then, secondarily, you at least have a possibility of affecting the score indirectly, which you don't on a news article. But it's clear what the evidence is, and the evidence is presented in a way that you don't have to read through a study to understand why this score was made. Does that make sense? It's a summary of everything out there on the internet about this topic. It's an explainer for that topic. But it's not a big topic. It's an explainer for a claim. You can dig as deep as you want to into it.
And it will be composed of claims that have been that you can contribute to or engage with, but that have been primarily and that
have been strengthened by professional communicators. It's kind of one way of saying it.
Interesting. I want to see that written. I want to see. You don't have to do this, Bentley, but this feels to me like a challenge to you. Which is
yeah. What's been clear is that I'm explaining, like, I keep explaining kind of the future stuff and not the now, and so that's having people come in with wrong interpretations. Like, I was about to change it to say a community driven, but you're pointing out the community doesn't have direct access in this, so let's not emphasize that. That's a bonus. So yeah. So I need a better explanation of what is Gullybot. Needs to be pulled all the way back. Like right now I have it saying decision making, like, and just Matthew and I went through one and we're like, this is a decision, like, this is too complex for the system right now. It's too experimental. We need to go back to so now I need to change it to fact check. But now I need to say, I need to not emphasize the community. It's just, this is Snopes. Oh, but hey, there's a scoring system, so it's transparent. Yeah. Okay. So I'll write up a better, based on what I've learned at this valuable meeting, a better explanation of what Gullybot is.
Yeah, and I would pull on the things that you're saying, which is like, it's Snopes, but, or it's a Wikipedia for, it's X for Y, or it's
Wikipedia for Y.
It's a cross between A and B.
Yeah,
it's
although yeah,
the best of A, B, and C. And then, like, what does Wikipedia do to get? I mean, you can actually edit it, but
yeah, that's the piece that Wikipedia has that this doesn't.
But we try, like, there's probably a place where Wikipedia has explained why you can trust its moderators, or somewhere it made it articulated some unbiasedness and some claim of expertise and something, and it probably did it pretty delicately in a way that I think would be make a really good model. That's one of them that I'm thinking of. I'm just sort of like, if you see other corollaries, it's a great place to sort of borrow here.
So the
And even if
explainer,
it is the present state, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely the present state, or explain like where it's headed as well. But that'll be,
so like the little sentence I have right there, Gollybot documents contentious issues to increase agreement and reduce misinformation and polarization. So that's wrong in the case that it's kind of putting the onus on Gollybot when there's really a lot of humans
yeah,
in there.
bingo. I mean, I think that's
right?
one
So
of
that's a miscommunication.
one of the elephants in the rooms here is that like, or is that like, yeah, that like, when you say Gollybot, I think of a bot or a system that is like driven through the many users, like not actually human interveners. Gollybot is an organization committed to blank,
Yeah.
or the Gollybot
Gollybot is a
Foundation
character
isn't.
of the
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
which sounds weird.
Or we built Gollybot to this.
Because
But
Gollybot's really
you don't get to
right.
claim that Gollybot is unbiased when biased humans are going to be making decisions. And so
Well,
now I need you to explain yourself. You can, but like I'm going to see past it.
But you're saying we are intentionally stating and doing our best to not be biased.
If you can make that statement.
But that's the
But you're not making that statement is what I'm saying. So that's
no,
what I'm saying.
Well, we haven't made that statement.
You haven't made that statement yet. But
Yeah.
I think that's conspicuously absent.
Well, yeah, Gollybot is the scoring algorithm, and that's the automated bit that I want people to. It's two things. Gollybot's
humans
opinion
feed
is
it.
not the opinion of the people in the organization. Gollybot's opinion is the scoring of the claims that are put into it. Now we're putting the claims in there, but at no point should someone assume that I believe that what Gollybot's saying.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm with you on this, Max. This is a hard thing to actually persuade people of, and honestly hard to actually do in a consistent manner.
And it's, well, okay, to be clear, it's impossible. But the point is that we're trying, it's an unreachable thing, but we are closer to it than anyone else.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, if you can't explain it, I mean, you can't just say the word transparency and then not describe how it happens.
Well, but I mean, that's where we're getting to, is being able to describe how it happened. But we at least have a theory on how it can happen. Unlike Snopes, which is just like, oh, we had some people do some research and we're just writing a couple paragraphs.
Oh, I mean, what does Snopes say? Like even like right now, like we have cyber ninjas counting ballots in Phoenix. Like that's those are the examples of like, okay, we're going to count the votes. Like that's supposed to be unbiased. We need a number of humans looking at them. And then we go, well, I don't trust cyber ninjas because they were created by a conservative political organization to count my votes. So like, who's counting the votes in Gollybot is another question. So is it cyber ninjas back there, or is it Planned Parenthood, or who's counting the votes in Gollybot?
Well, so if we make a really good UI, it'll be obvious how the score is generated.
Sure, but which claims get to be put up there, and how many of them, and how consolidated they are? A lot of the decisions are left up to humans, and so I now need to trust the humans in the system to do it in an unbiased way if I'm going to trust the information.
No, so you don't need to trust the humans in the system, because you can look at the score and look at the algorithm and decide whether you trust that.
I hear you, but I feel like you are tangential to what Max is saying here. Since, yes, what is visible will be very clear in how it is used. It is getting to that point that Max is or talking about, I think.
Getting to the point where it's visible on how the scoring worked on that specific
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, it's the process of what's on that screen, like what was chosen to compose this. Like I can't grok.
No,
Nine-
there's difference between what's on the screen or what's in
That's what I'm saying.
the system, what's in the system generating the score. Those are two different things. So which
No, no,
one
I'm
are you?
so like, well, what I mean is that what's on the
With it-
screen, the model, not the view, but the model, the
Right, okay,
actual,
right.
this is a claim and it's counter to that claim and it has this weight because of this and this and this and this and this, the model.
Mhm.
The choice of what's fed into the model,
Yeah, but you
the
can
inputs to the model
right.
have human intervention. I might trust
Right.
the model to do like, I can trust the way that the model does its aggregation and does its calculation. And you're telling me that the model is transparent. That's tremendous. But it's the inputs to the models that humans who I don't know, I've never met, and
Right.
I don't necessarily trust.
But you can.
You need to
Right.
explain to me who these are, because I'm like, because I trust vote counting, hand ballot checked vote counting in Maricopa County. I trust what it means to go about and recount every vote multiple times over. Like a recount is very important to me from a democracy standpoint. All of a sudden, you put in a highly political organization called Cyber Ninjas, and I'm like, I can't trust that. I don't think that they're gonna, I don't necessarily trust
But
humans
right.
and what they're gonna put into that model.
But in this scenario, the analogy is not only do you have Cyber Ninja, but you get a copy of every vote, everything, and you can hire your own team to come in and count the votes.
Do we? Because in that analogy, we would be rephrasing the vote so that it's clearer. So we're already making changes to it. And we are also choosing some votes that we decide are duplicates. Or
No, what I'm saying is that it would be as if you took all that data from all the votes from the Cyber Ninja and you handed it to another organization. You handed it to 10 organizations, and all 10 of those organizations can count the votes.
Well, no, the analogy here is that Cyber Ninjas made the votes, not counted them. They made the votes. They get to choose what goes on the screen and how it's related to one another.
Oh, well, okay. Well, then
those are the curators, right?
No, but that's different.
There's no interaction with Goalibot as of now where a private citizen can input a claim.
Yeah, right. This is exactly the same concern I brought up earlier as well.
But anyone,
and how I feel.
But anyone can look at every claim in Goalibot and decide whether everything's there. You can't do that. So if
what's the point? I mean, what's the point of, like, I can do a global audit and decide whether or not, but once I've done the global audit, I've basically just done all the research you were trying to get me to avoid. So the only way I can get a more synopsis, like, just read the top one and trust it.
You don't have to do it yourself. So you could have, a person you agree. You could have a group of people look at it. But the point is it there for you to look at? I'm not saying and it is easier to look at. Like, you don't have to count every vote, because you could look at the top level and look at the scoring and say, these three I agree with, this one I don't agree with, right? So then you don't have to read 30 of those 55 claims. You only have to go in and look at these 10. So then you're now cutting down the search space for, is this analysis correct or not, by leaps and bounds. You don't have to read it all. You just have to read the ones that through the score you disagree with.
So 2 points that I think we are missing in order to reach the goal that you're looking for. One, to make it feel that we are not creating the arguments with our own slant for phrase and everything. We want to be able to tie them to the original input directly. So either we are storing or linking to the original or tweet that was the phrasing given to us so people can compare and determine whether it's trustworthy, how we phrased it once we put it in. And two, you would need to have a full accounting of all of the inputs from people giving to, or that are tweeting at us, so that people can compare what the input was versus what we
So that-
chose.
I don't think that that's actually provides much value. You just, anyone can look at all the things as it's phrased in there and decide whether it's all there. Why do you need to know how someone said it or what other people said? The
Because
question
for-
is everything you know in there? You don't really care about the stuff you don't know about. The question is it all my concerns in there somewhere?
Well, if you're
in
trying
the
to
right
learn about it, you
place.
really do care about the stuff that you don't know about. You need to have trust that they're fully accounting for stuff that you didn't already know.
That's
And-
that's
but-
not what people are concerned with. That's if you want to trust the decision and actually do what's on there. But our question isn't am I going to go out and get a vaccine? My question is, when people are arguing about whether vaccines, do I have it? And then I can go in and learn about that stuff. If I want to know whether everything this other guy believes in it, then I need to call him and have him go and look at it. But there's no way I can evaluate. It's a step too far to say that I have to have proof that we've put in everything everyone thinks. I mean, if it's out in the public and you know anyone can look at it and anyone can comment on it, then you go ask your friends, hey, have you seen this or not? Or there's another organization that comes in and looks at it. As long as the data is there, people can look at it. You don't need to know where it came from.
So
And it's not
Comment.
supposed to be exhaustive because you're supposed to go in there and say, this piece is missing, I'm going to add it.
this piece is missing, I'm going to add it.
Yeah. I mean, it's done through Twitter and someone is going to come in and
So
and
how
write
does
it up
that
better.
work?
It
What do I
doesn't-
do?
It
I
doesn't.
hit a button,
It
then I
posts it to Twitter.
and then what happens?
Well, then you get a response on your tweet that says we added it and how we added it.
For all things
Well,
that are added?
there's
Or does a human choose whether or not
so
it's important and relevant?
the
and to add
point
it?
is, if we don't do it correctly, whatever the correct action is, people won't trust it. But that's to be done. You know, trust is something built by doing the right things consistently over time. Having a system that is completely trustless where people want trust it from the very beginning is not a goal that I can achieve. But if they come in and they post it to Twitter and they see and they get responses on enough of them to where they know that it's being done, then that's fine. But it's a good possibility that, you know, too many people were responding or get spammed and won't be able to handle it. But there will be people that will post something that's nonsense, and it, you know, I may choose to ignore it because I don't really care whether they trust me, because you can't convince everyone to trust everything, you know, to trust it. It's 100% is not what we're going for. But the question is, for the people that are reasonable, that are reasonably disagreeing, but currently can't have a discussion because they can't keep all this information in their head at once. Those people will have a resource they can go to where the information is organized, they can get to the right piece quickly, and, you know, we'll settle 1% more of the arguments. But it doesn't need to be anywhere close to perfect or full or complete. Nor could it ever be. And it's not so much about trust. Like, I don't need them to believe me. I want them to go in and be skeptical, open it up and find out where it's wrong. But there will be a group of people that will open it up. And then they will explore it because they don't have to read all 55 claims. They just have to go down the scores to find the one they disagree with, and they will learn something new that they didn't know, and they will change their mind. But they don't need to know how the data got in there for them to look at it. I mean, none of the news organizations do I know every paper they read in order to get their analysis.
Okay. So I think hearing that, I'm like, I think I'm really just at two things that are missing in somewhere in site discovery or score discovery. Because what I see, the thing that seems missing to me is like more about how claims are created and chosen. And how do I refute, how do I create / refute a claim? Create, promote, refute a claim, like how do I interact with a claim, but mostly like how do I, like this is a kind of a sub of this, but like I see that the score is based on how the claims relate to one another, and then I can do all this, I can tell all the rest of the story about the bot, like it's all here for you, you can see it all. The thing that's missing, in my opinion, is how do those claims get created and chosen, and can I do one? And can I refute it? So then if the answer is actually no, you don't, this was done by experts, that's one, and I want to hear more about that or be able to double click on that and get like a trustworthy Wikipedia explanation or a Snopes or a unbiased something. I need a some statement. Or it's actually like it's a combination of that, and yes, you create one and then it's chosen based on this, go ahead and click here and you'll see it in action. FAQ, why wasn't my thing chosen? I've been making a claim, why wasn't it chosen? What is your policy around vulgarity, things like that? It's like, no, those are not necessarily like the first cool thing that I want a user to experience, but I feel like that's the thing that's missing for me. It was just like if I put on my why is Goaliebot wrong? I'm like, because some biased human curated an argument in front of me, or some non-expert has done a non-comprehensive view of this, or somebody is filtering out and censoring quote unquote disinformation or something like that. But
Yeah,
I think, I think it's not that hard of a reach to get to like the statement of how the humans are involved in the system, and how claims are selected. After that, it's like, sweet, it is 1% plus better by having all the related information relating to one another. But I think there is at least possibly like a proxy for like, you should trust what's in here before you have to go and read like 137 statements about vaccines to see if it's checks out in your opinion. I think you kind of need to know whether or not human, if it's interactive on the public side, are people stuffing the ballot box or like DDoSing it to the point that it's actually non-democratic, like are the other people like me cheating the system, or if there's referees, what keeps the referees in bounds, and why do I trust the referees to make this a valuable space and a valuable process?
For an example of the sort of information that you're looking for, I tossed the PolitiFact article about their methodology into the chats, which I think is the sort of communication you're thinking of to cover the bases about how we go about things.
Yeah, dude, right on. Yeah, I mean, like, I know that.
Like, we don't need it in that in depth for ours, particularly not now, but.
No, but it's a good example to like, yeah, totally, to like look at, draw from, kind of model off, like, yeah, they have to do truthometer. How do we determine truthometer ratings, flipometer? What are our partnerships? What's our funding? anyway, I think Bentley, I'm just kind of like re-emphasizing the call
Yeah,
it
well, the big,
an invitation or a gentle challenge to like tackle the story of like where the humans are in the system and
Mhm.
humans are in the loop.
and setting that up front. I mean, that's probably the problem, is that it's not obvious up front what this is. Because I've gone through several iterations, it was explaining kind of an old
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, I think I sort of look at it and I'm like, oh, it's a battle, like pick a side, and like I'll like be able to touch buttons and like, you know, engage with it and give it. I think I sort of, and not even having come from Kialo, my intuition sort of makes me think Kialo. I'm like, it's a public forum, like start commenting immediately and start, you know, like there's part of me that thinks of it more as an interactive forum than necessarily like a curated experience with some interactive public feedback loop. So now I'm like, I don't quite know what the thing is. So there's part of me that's like trust. There's part of me that's just like understanding, like, what do I do with it? Which is like, do I just read it? Do I share it, or do I like contribute? And that might be, you know, very clear for a handful of folks, but like, if it's just a data source, like a summarized, curated data source that's like more validatable or ultimately like better, then I'm like, tell me about your researchers. Like, do you have more researchers than PolitiFact? Like, do you have more researchers than...
Yeah, and I know that's the normal thing. The problem is it doesn't.
I also think you're onto something with
The
like
quality
audit,
of those,
it's
the
auditable.
quality, see, the thing is that there's all, in the other systems, there's all this kind of like arbitrary judgment that is not documented. But in this system, because it's fully documented and fully documented, and because it's open to scrutiny, it doesn't matter who the researchers are. You just look at it and say, is this quality work? It's no, there's not all this stuff hidden, but I'll have to figure out how to
No, I think
explain that.
I agree. I think you're onto something there. What is that? Yeah, I guess you're saying that means it's transparent, and I'm like, well, the only thing that's not transparent is like things that got filtered out of that system, or like
Well, but you see that
improperly
because
translated.
their absence is glaring. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So if you're looking at it, you in 3
interesting.
clicks, you'll, because it's a binary search tree.
But yeah, but I think the other thing that's challenging there is like a decision to omit, like the presence of a decision, like the presence of the documentation of a decision to omit is different than the omission.
Unless you make a
Like if
system
you were to
so
say like
obvious when something's missing that you don't need to clearly state it.
You know, another one is put everything in and hide all the garbage.
No, because I mean that's all of Twitter. You know what I'm saying? It's,
yeah, I guess
it's
you're
not.
right.
It's
only if
everything's been said 1,000 different ways.
Right. I guess I'm sort of thinking that like you've come to this corpus of argumentation based on people actively engaging at Goalibot, and people, that's not how it's getting created or necessarily where you're headed.
I mean, ideally in the future, it would be, it would, I mean, if it all worked out right, it would happen that way, but I don't think that ideal is, I don't think that's reachable. But it's more like, we had some clear research, we're going to get feedback from some people, but that feedback is crap. So we're going to need to like look at what they're saying in the most stupid way, and we're going to have to really figure out what they're trying to say and then rephrase it completely so that it actually makes logical sense.
So
and then put it in there so that when they read it, they will say, oh, that's what I meant to say.
So then possibly there's a thing here where like the feedback is is part of the transparency, that like if people feel like Gullybot humans, like you're saying that the feedback is there as a check and balance to like the feedback is after like a global or a binary search audit of whether I think I can trust this argument, or whether or not I think it's comprehensive or properly accounting for blank, blank, blank arguments. The feedback would come in the form of a tweet. The tweet then is associated with a node in that tree. Then I could potentially have, like in the interface, I could have a toggle that's like all the feedback about this, all the feedback that is about this tweet, not just give me feedback, but like, and I could even have a meter of like, this one's really contentious, like this one's got a ton of feedback, this one's really contentious. I could look at that feedback.
Yeah.
And then I could even say, it looks like everyone is saying that Gullybot is blowing it on this node because they're not putting in the studies about children and mercury and autism that like, and they're not in, and I can see all this feedback, and I'm sitting here like looking at this one node and I'm seeing all this feedback, and I'm like, now I can see a differential that like, it looks like some human is intervening, or it's either caused by intentional omission or lack of capacity or something. This feedback is not getting incorporated. The loop is broken, and now I can make a judgment as to whether or not there's like bias in the
Yeah,
system.
I just think that's a nice to have. I don't think that's alpha feature.
So then the feedback is more like, hey, use Twitter to give the system admins
What are we missing?
your
If we're
opinion.
Yeah.
But there's no system for traceback to like go and see that as another user.
I mean, so in one of the designs, I had a link that would run the query in Twitter for any links in Twitter to that URL, so that
Hmm.
you could see it in Twitter, in the Twitter search.
Mm-hmm.
But it's only for that claim. It's not for all the claims in the tree. So it's not
Mm.
very useful. It's better than, it's different than nothing. But I mean, in the end,
Mm-hmm.
people, I think the more important quality check is if you dig into it and see that it has all of your concerns. Whether it has other people's concerns is important if you just want to just trust it, but I don't want people to just trust it. This is a documentation of what's known at that moment, and you need to dig into it a little bit to make sure it still makes sense. So I don't want them trusting it. I want them digging into it. So the trust should be built because they're reading the analysis, and the visualization is clear enough that they understand how those claims are going to the top. And if they don't feel strong in that topic, and then they should point their friend that they know that's strong in that topic to go in and see what their friend thinks. I don't think them knowing that the whole internet has looked at it and what the whole internet has said about it is that's nice to have, but that's not the primary quality check. That's quality check by, it's not the primary thing we're trying to solve. The primary thing we're trying to solve is, can you take all the facts or most of the facts on an issue and make it to where people can explore it quickly and easily? And you have to have a score to do that, because it allows you to do the binary search thing.
Mm-hmm. Right on.
So, but
In-
but there's definitely a lot of misleading things in the description of Gullybot that's sending people down the wrong path of understanding.
Yeah. And I can definitely like appreciate like the difference between you know, maybe like the not creating perfect, you know, trust. I think in a minimum, even just like a non-misleading understanding,
Mhm.
you know, as a minimum, especially like what are the capabilities in there? Like how should I intend to use this? There's almost a few bullet points of like user stories that can be out front, like use this to, people will use this to do blank, or to do blank. Like, you might find a synopsis there that's useful.
So I'll work on, before our
Yeah.
next meeting, I'll work on a rewording of
Such a
the
challenge.
goal of that primary statement, and then a little bit deeper. So yeah, I'll have that.
Okay, take a look at that.
Cool.
Thanks for inviting me into such a challenging challenge. Right
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, there's definitely like, this is definitely something that may go nowhere.
I mean,
the,
like,
the end of the experiment might be, well, that doesn't work. On to the next idea.
it would be helpful too to kind of get a sense of what the experiment is in your mind. Like, what is the container that is the experiment? Like, do you want to run what are the parameters? Like, you want to get 100 arguments, or 3 arguments with 100 contributors linking out, or sort of like what you'd like to see is like engagement metrics, and then sort of like learn, what do you want to learn? A little bit about, because I think I'm maybe a little bit like,
Mhm.
I'm sort of floating in between the like MVP and the like way down the road thing, and not sure like how to calibrate. But
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point.
But right on. High five. Goodbye, Matt. We'll see you next week.
All
Yep.
right.
It'll be
Thanks,
good to
man.
have a week to stew on this before we tackle the next steps.
Yeah.
For the UX at least.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.